At the United Nations in New York, all eyes were on President Donald Trump. What began as a routine bilateral meeting with Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky quickly turned into an international headline. On the sidelines, a reporter asked Trump a pointed question. Should NATO countries shoot down Russian aircraft if they violate their airspace? Trump's reply was immediate, short, and unmistakably clear. Yes, I do. Those three words reverberated far beyond the walls of the UN headquarters. They signaled not only Washington's willingness to take aggressive action against Russia, but also raised questions about whether NATO, the world's most powerful military alliance, might be on the verge of crossing a line it has so far carefully avoided. Trump's blunt endorsement of a shoot-down policy is more than just a soundbite. It touches at the very heart of NATO's collective defense doctrine. Article 5 of the NATO Charter commits allies to come to the aid of any member under attack. Yet for decades, NATO leaders have sought to deter Russian aggression without sparking direct conflict. Trump's words suggest a readiness to abandon restraint in favor of action. In Berlin, German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius quickly voiced a counterpoint. Speaking at a press conference, Pistorius made clear that Germany would not support such a dangerous move. For Berlin, shooting down Russian jets risks opening a front NATO may not be prepared to handle. The fear is simple. A single missile launched at a Russian aircraft could ignite a chain reaction with consequences far beyond the Baltics. But for frontline states like Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, Trump's statement feels like overdue recognition. These countries live daily under the shadow of Russian military pressure. In recent weeks, Estonia reported that 2 Russian fighter jets entered its airspace and remained for 12 long minutes. Officials described it as not just a breach of sovereignty, but as a deliberate test of NATO's resolve. To underscore the gravity, Estonia's Foreign Minister Margus Tsahkna presented flight maps at the United Nations. He argued that these intrusions are not isolated incidents, but part of a systematic campaign by Moscow to intimidate its neighbours and probe Western defences. For smaller NATO members, the violations are not abstract, they are lived realities. Trump's words, therefore, land differently depending on where you stand. In Washington, they may sound like strength. In Berlin or Paris, they may sound like recklessness. And in Tallinn or Riga, they sound like solidarity, however risky. What makes this moment particularly combustible is the broader backdrop. Russia's war in Ukraine is grinding on with no clear end in sight. Drones, missiles, and fighter jets are not only targeting Ukrainian positions, but increasingly straying across borders. Each incursion into NATO territory raises the same question. Was it an accident or was it a message? Analysts warn that Trump's yes could become a self-fulfilling prophecy. If NATO air forces, emboldened by political backing, down a Russian jet, Moscow would almost certainly retaliate. A single event, a radar lock, a miscalculated maneuver, or a missile strike could pull the alliance into direct confrontation with a nuclear-armed adversary. For Germany and several Western European allies, that is precisely the nightmare scenario they are trying to prevent. Pistorius's rejection was not just about policy, it was about sending a signal to Moscow that not every NATO member is eager to escalate. The alliance's unity has been its strength, but unity is fragile when the stakes are war and peace. Meanwhile, Trump's stance reflects his long-standing posture on NATO and Russia. During his previous tenure in the White House, he often criticized allies for not spending enough on defense. His latest comment suggests he wants NATO to show teeth, not just issue warnings. In his view, deterrence without the willingness to act is no deterrence at all. Inside the UN chambers, the tension was palpable. Delegates from more than 40 countries listened as Estonia's foreign minister warned that Russian provocations are increasing. He reminded them that airspace is sovereignty and sovereignty must be defended. The implication was clear: if NATO fails to act, Moscow will only push further. The dilemma is stark. On one side lies deterrence through strength, embodied in Trump's unflinching yes. On the other lies caution, articulated by leaders like Pistorius, who fear escalation. Between them stand the smaller NATO states, demanding protection, yet knowing the risks that protection entails. Experts note that Russia has a long history of testing Western boundaries. From buzzing naval ships in the Baltic Sea to flying dangerously close to civilian airliners, Moscow often uses brinkmanship as a tool of foreign policy. The repeated drone and jet intrusions are part of that pattern. What is new is the political readiness from Washington to respond with force. The implications extend beyond Europe. Allies in Asia, including Japan and South Korea, are watching closely. If NATO draws a red line and enforces it, the message to other adversaries, free from North Korea to China, could be powerful. But if NATO hesitates, the opposite message may be sent, that even the most powerful alliance in history cannot guarantee protection. For now, the official NATO line remains cautious. Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg has often emphasized that while NATO will defend every inch of Allied territory, the alliance seeks to avoid escalation with Russia. Whether Trump's personal declaration shifts that balance remains to be seen. The coming days will be crucial. Diplomats at the UN are expected to debate security assurances, while defence ministers across Europe scramble to assess how to respond. Already, NATO air patrols have increased in the Baltics, and radar monitoring has intensified. The skies over Eastern Europe are tense, and one wrong move could set off a crisis. For the families living near NATO's eastern borders, Trump's words are not an abstract geopolitical game. They are about safety. Each time a Russian jet crosses the invisible line in the sky, people wonder, will this be the moment when NATO finally acts? And if it does, will their towns and cities be the first to feel the fallout? What Trump has done with a single phrase is shift the conversation. No longer is the debate about whether Russia is testing NATO. That much is clear. The debate now is whether NATO should respond with the full weight of its military power, even at the risk of war. The echoes of history are unmistakable. From the Cold War standoffs in Berlin to the Cuban Missile Crisis, moments of brinkmanship have defined relations between Washington and Moscow. Each time, restraint pulled the world back from the edge. Today, Trump's yes suggests restraint may no longer be the guiding principle. In New York, as cameras rolled and microphones captured his words, Trump likely knew the impact they would have. His supporters may view it as strength, his critics as recklessness. But for NATO's eastern members, it may be the reassurance they have long sought. The international community now faces a choice. Will Trump's call be treated as a personal remark, soon forgotten in the flood of UN speeches, or will it mark a turning point in NATO's approach to Russian aggression? The answer could shape the security of Europe and the world for years to come. In the end, the stakes could not be higher. Airspace violations may seem like brief technical episodes measured in minutes, but behind them lie questions of sovereignty, credibility, and survival. And with Russia's war in Ukraine showing no signs of slowing, the risks of miscalculation are rising. As delegates file out of the United Nations building and cameras switch off, the debate continues in capitals across the world. For now, Trump's words stand as both a warning and a challenge. NATO must decide whether to act on his uncompromising line or whether Europe's caution will prevail. What is certain is this: with Russian jets circling NATO's borders and global leaders divided over the response, the danger of confrontation is no longer hypothetical. It is real, it is imminent, and it is playing out day by day in the skies above Europe.